South Africa elections, I think it's a justification of what the black man once again ever we took out the late His Excellency Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years of his life, which I might say, and I will say that if the white men or the whites in South Africa knew there was going to be a day that that man was coming out from jail and redeem the nation and take them back for them to regain and take their country, I'm sorry, they would have killed him, not for him to die naturally as he had. They didn't anticipate that. They didn't expect that. So if somebody sacrificed himself for how many years? 27 years, sitting in a small corner with virtually nothing. Lost his wife, the children, left the wife and left the children behind, but with zeal and determination to redeem, survive through the hardship, and then made sure that he sacrificed himself for his people. Successive governments, politicians, they have really let Nelson Mandela down. But if in humanity, if we had a chance for us to come back and open our eyes from our grave and see what is going on, Mandela would have been disappointed greatly for seeing what ANC and where the ship of South African politics, where it is today, and the leaders and where they've taken the country to. Yes, it is indeed very sad. It is indeed very sad in the sense that when Mandela was released on that 11th February in 1990, till today, it took him how many years for them even to allow a political discourse, a democratic political discourse to take place. 3 years when Mandela, by destiny, he became the president. And by destiny, of course, the white man, or either the Hollands or the Dutch or the British or the Indians, or built all together, knew that yes, the continent is not ours. So certainly going into multi-party and elections, it was going to be a black man taking back their continent called a country. So indeed, it took place. Mandela became a first president. The man was tired. So after 5 years, he said, I'm tired. He has prepared people who were in the struggle with him. However, the real ones that he started, the Watala Sisulu, the Oliver Tambo, and etc., they all left him behind. But then the ones that were just behind him, who took up and he felt that he could handle the mantle to them and sit back and just only give me a spiritual father and guide him, like Swapo Samnojuma is doing in Namibia, even at the age of 100, almost 100 years, how he's supporting the political class or the youth or the new Namibia for them to propel and make the country work, regardless of the difficulties. Let's ask ourselves, because Nelson Mandela, no president, Thabo Mbeki, Zuma, and Cyril Ramaphosa, none of them have completed their terms with ANC, a party of the black man, not a party of a white man, the party that cried for apartheid to end, the party that reached out to the entire world for support, for them to have their own nation and govern, rule, administer, and then manage. They could not survive what you term political stability. So I'm referring to you, Madam Tata. Where the political stability that ANC, post Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki could not have political stability. He managed the first 5 years until his second term when he won, because naturally ANC was still going to win. After 2 years, there was also political instability within the ANC, coup d'etat, to take Thabo Mbeki out. And there came Zuma. Zuma survived 5 years. His second term, he survived only 2 years. And then he was also coup d'etat. They also staged a coup to take him out. Who next? Ramaphosa. He's finished his 5 years. The second term, he's also going to suffer coup d'etat. So what's the political stability in the mind? How many years was de Klerk was a prime minister, president of South Africa, and those before him? They had political stability. Our own ANC cannot manage political stability. Now let's look at the numbers and let's look at the scenarios. What brought Thabo Mbeki out? Why did Zuma take Thabo Mbeki out? They all rather hang on their neck. Discomfort, lack of popularity, corruption, and corruptible practices. These were the three things. They've lost fame with the grassroots. They are corrupt. The people are not happy with them. And by their political system, they don't need to go to the general polls. They need to reintroduce a presidential candidate and take you out. So they took him out and then brought Zuma. Zuma came. And the South Africans would say that his time, he registered the biggest corruption cases, blah, 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 blah. So after the 5 years, another group, another people, another settings of the political divide in the ANC will say that Zuma is a fighter. But let us not forget one thing. Today, Cyril Ramaphosa, when Nelson Mandela was giving up power, Ramaphosa at that time was a strong political class. He was a strong politician. When Ramaphosa could not win the politics, the presidential selection, or Mandela giving him the power, what did Ramaphosa do? He left ANC. For your information, he stopped politics and went into business, and he went to the white side. So he was the whites. That is why he went to do his business and made money. He came back in the late 2000s, the mid 2000s, when he realized that, okay, who else? Zuma has also become unpopular. He also staged other ANC group also to campaign and then bring Zuma down. And Ramaphosa came. Now let's look at it. If one would refer and ask that he who hanged, that Zuma was very corrupt. He supervised his own farms with the Falafala debacle, as we call it, the Falafala investigation. $4 million was found on his farms. $4 million dollars were on his farms. So he was not corrupt. Therefore, he was able to manage through because he is what? The president. Look at how many South Africa state institutions, enterprises that have gone into divestiture or in private sector. It has also been managed carefully by him, supervised by him. So the discomfort had also set in that Ramaphosa is also not popular. So what do we mean here? We have been preaching, my Dr. Tata is talking about political stability. Now Mandela out of the equation, the political stability of Mbeki didn't hold. Zuma did not hold. Then it came to Ramaphosa. Certainly, if even he had won these elections, one touch, of course, some of us, we knew that it was not going to happen. So it's certainly, what is it going to happen? He was also going to manage only 2 years and go out. Now, because of lack of understanding, when the old man, I'm referring to the 82-year-old man Zuma, was put in jail, even though between you and I, he didn't spend 1 day in jail, but quote unquote, on paper, he had been in jail. But that jail, they referred that he was there. He was never a mate. He never went there. But for the fact that the man had been thrown into jail, and the fact that he believes that if I'm corrupt, all of us, we are corrupt because we are ANC. 3 of them, Thabo Mbeki, 3 of them, Zuma, Ramaphosa. How do we allow one man to go to jail 27 years, bring back for us to deem to get our nation, and the 3 people who successively came after Nelson Mandela, all of you are corrupt? Looking at the ANC, That chalked over 70% of Nelson Mandela's selection to become a president. Today had gone down. First of all, was the divisions needed? The parties, the Malema party, the EFF, then also the party of today, Zuma, which I'm going to give you a lecture on that subject. Was that needed? So the ANC itself has seen faces of 2, 3, 4, or more than 5 to 6 parties formed within ANC. Over 6 parties formed within the ANC. The popular ones are the one that you saw, Malema, and that of the MK of Zuma. Now, Zuma is not prepared to be a president of South Africa. No. He just wanted to make an impact and say that I'll do you. I'll show you where power lies. Now, South Africa elections, 40% for ANC. Very sad. Very dangerous. Let us not forget, the DA, the Democratic Alliance, which is led by John Steenhuisen, they have been the second greatest party, bigger party, even after Mandela, during Mandela's time, and consistently they build up. If you look at their numbers from Mandela's death, from Thabo Mbeki, Jacob Zuma, up to today, they've graduated with their numbers. Whereas ANC have allowed divisions to come on their side, their numbers are dwindling, it's going down. They cannot see it. They are not seeing it. So the next 4 years, we see the DA appreciating, because now when you box the DA and other alliances they put together, they are going to have about 144 parliamentarians. So think of it. Over the period, they will come back. If they will not introduce apartheid, they will introduce it in a different way. Political stability for the African man. Now, here is the analysis. The South African political system, there's elections, 40.x% for ANC, 20.x% also for the DA. And look at the funny colors. Whereas the ANC boasts of the yellow, the DA boasts of the blue, and then the green has been taken by the old man, and the red for the Malema. Beautiful colors, all loud colors in the world. These are embodied in South Africa, embodiment of South African political landscape, which is very fine. Now, Malema, that was more or less. So, Malema, who was third in the last elections in 2019, Malema did well, and he's tried to present some members of parliament. The question is, was that even needed? That a grassroots politician, a grassroots member of ANC, what happened? Where did we reach? How did we get to this stage that Malema has also disagreement with ANC for him to have his political party? Now, followed by the old man. But we've forgotten. And one mistake that Ramaphosa had done, which no civilized and experienced politician like that would ever do. You know very well that the KwaZulu-Natal had always been the strongest base in the times of Mandela's imprisonment of the ANC regime. And the size and the biggest part of the KwaZulu-Natal, all of them, they resonate with the Zulu people. They resonate was also Zuma. So what at all could they not manage their differences? And they didn't see the old man last year. He didn't come forward because they wouldn't have. He first initiated a move to be in parliament as a parliamentary candidate. They knocked it off. So they should have known the man's intention. Rather go to him, talk to him, and tell him that without you, without Mandela, without this, there wouldn't have been. We wouldn't where we are now. We would have still been in bondage. We have still been in slavery. We have still been in apartheid. We have still been in racial segregation. They couldn't, as black man. They couldn't discuss. They couldn't manage. They couldn't outrage. They couldn't fix themselves. Okay, allow him. Here we are now. Now ANC is 40%. The main grassroots ANC people will not today, tomorrow agree that there should be a coalition with the DA, that is the white party, because if they are to do a coalition with DA alone, they are already 50% plus one. They can form government. How does now ANC with the red with the blue party can form a government of what? So now, the root cause of ANC struggle, I'm a traditionalist Pan-African, I would say that it will be a difficult pairings for the two of them to go into government. Because what does it mean? All the economic powers, we know the chief executives, bigger the hands of the whites. So now, therefore, if they are going to go into coalition or alliance, whether Ramaphosa like it or not, he has to bring down his vice president and bring John Steenhuisen as the Malema. They couldn't convince him to stay in the ANC. Zuma, they couldn't convince him to stay in the ANC. So the danger point is that there will be another emerging of another Zuma, because Hiblisa and others, Zondo and co, they are all ANC. They are there. So over the period, what is going to happen? The DA party is now also looking for coalition. The next election, the DA will be concentrating on getting the valuable, very grassroots, very popular ANC people and tell them that you are capable of becoming also like Zuma. So when they have a multiplication of even two more ANC members like Zuma, Malema, and two more to form a party, there is no ANC. And that is just coming. Because you can move from 70% to 76% and come down from 1994, come 2024, you are now up down to 40%. Because there's a disagreement among yourselves. Prof made a comment, which I was going to go there. How many and how far did Thabo Mbeki close the economic wider gap between them and the white race, or vis-a-vis the other races? Employment gap from the time when the white man called the apartheid system was there, up to today, how much have they appreciated in terms of adding value and getting people employed? Virtually zero. So if over the period of 1994 till today, we're talking about 30 years, you've not added even 2% to 3% of employment, you have no business to be in government. Because the bigger employment that has been given even to the blacks are from the white company or the white people that we call them, or they call them that they were originators of apartheid. They have employed the blacks more than the white blacks. How many South Africans have businesses to employ their own blacks? Every South African who is working, if not for the federal government or for the government, the state institutions, the public, and then the state departments, everybody works for a white company. Either be Chinese or be Indian or white African. So naturally, the ANC post Nelson Mandela from 1996, they have done virtually nothing. Only political struggle among themselves. That has brought them onto their knees today. So if ANC could not manage 50%, could not even manage 48%, whereas they could go to the other minority parties and bring two to get 50%. But here, imagine a whooping margin of nearly 11%. Malema is not having 10%. He's 9 point something. The old man is 15%, which ANC will struggle due to and as a result of arrogance. Ramaphosa cannot go. Now, if they are to form a union government, the next party, the next number, the bigger number is the DA. So now if the DA has to concede and be part of the union government, the alliance or the grand coalition, now ANC have to share the government with the white supremacy. So if they are sharing the white supremacy with them, then they would also now tell you the farms that you are preaching about, sharing their farms, sharing this and that, you cannot make mention because they are part of the union government, sharing power with you. Now they are to form government in 2 weeks. So it means that unless Ramaphosa raises up his hands once again and say that, I'm sorry, I couldn't form the union government. So they have to go into the second runoff. And if they are to go into second runoff, it would deepen into against the ANC, because this time around, Jacob Zuma, who only campaigned less than 5 months in the KwaZulu-Natal, one of his strongest base is Johannesburg. He didn't campaign much in Johannesburg. If there would be a second election, then the Johannesburg caucuses in support of Jacob Zuma would all now come. Now Zuma will appreciate more than 20%. So it will worsen ANC, the chances. So South Africa is in trouble. ANC is in trouble. And if they are to form grand coalition government of the first four, the ANC, the DA, the EFF, and then the MK, if they are to also come on board, certainly Zuma does not want any post. Zuma is going to introduce his daughter, Duduzile. He is going to introduce the daughter or introduce any of his party activists that, okay, before I add my numbers or I come on board, I want the vice presidency. Ramaphosa will not give in to that. Then if he tries also to have an alliance with the DA, which is the white party, it will also create another wider gap and openings and division, and there will be immediately a vote of no confidence for Jacob Zuma. What does it mean? For Ramaphosa. What does it mean? He's already not been crowned a president. So if there's another vote of confidence, so the ANC will be in disarray. They'll be shattered completely, because the strong grassroots ANC would also not agree that Ramaphosa do what is called an alliance government with the DA. They will not agree. And if Malema would also not give in to Ramaphosa, because the two of them are enemies. Ramaphosa is also not fine with Zuma, because he cannot go to Zuma. He's arrogant. So the analysis, what Zuma faces, is either to go with the 4, which will be a difficult task, because if he's going to go with the 4, Zuma can raise a vote that gives the presidency to Malema and step back. Zuma can also say, give the presidency to Duduzile, my daughter, and step back if you want us to be the alliance. If they want to go and have an alliance with the DA only to get the 50+1, the ANC will break into 3 or 4. So there will be there's a serious issue. All boils down on the fact that all the 3 presidents, they couldn't bring South Africans, black South Africans to the level, whereas all of them would have been encouraged, having jobs, having money. Let me not lie to you, Susie. Yeah. South Africa, at a point, during the time of the white man, during the time of Mandela, they had budget surplus. South Africa money, even now, the money that the country has, it is still a richer nation. But tell me, who has the money? The money are still with the whites. Who has the money? The middle class. That forms part of the Indians. How many of the blacks are middle class? Very few. Those who had the chance to serve in the government and stole money. But naturally, traditionally, a young South African like you and I, working, making money, very few. It's just of late, that South African ladies and young men, you see them in Dubai to buy and sell. They are not used to that. They were not. The apartheid destroyed them. Even if you care to know, the only country in Africa A black African nation, black continent nation that hasn't got a traditional food is South Africa. They don't have any of the South African traditions. They don't have any traditional food. How many traditional food has Sierra Leone, Cameroon has? How many Nigeria, Ghana? Nigeria has more than 200 traditional local food. South Africa hasn't got one. Everything is sugar-based. Bread, ketchup, bread, that. They don't have. So you see, they are laid back in terms of the African cultural settings and African tradition. Yes, it was not their fault. But having had in your hands 30 years to have your own affair, a country which I would say, either good or bad, the white men, they worked. South Africa has roads. South Africa has infrastructure. South Africa has what Europe has. They did it for you. So stepping into power with the majority of your nationals, you could not bring them to alleviate the suffering. You could not bring them apart also with the level of economies. You could not create entrepreneurs. You could not create businessmen and women. You could not create technocrats. They don't have. So they all have to resort back into the white supremacy, which they claim that they were apartheid or pro-apartheid system. Now the danger point is that, as I've enumerated, is that whether we like it or not, Ramaphosa cannot form a government. He faces the daunting task, because if he wants to convince Malema to come and give him the vice presidency, Malema's number will soon make it up to the 50+1. If he has to form alliance with the red party, the blue party, the South Africans, the ANC will not agree. Because the hardcore grassroots ANC, they never would agree for ANC to be in alliance with the blue party. That is the DA. So where are they now? And they are to form government in 2 weeks. And soon as Ramaphosa makes an attempt to have all the three parties to support, because the other parties, which forms part of the 11, the other 7, their percentage put together is not up to 7%. So there is nothing that you can do with them. But then the DA is trying to do recovery of all those parties to their side to form also a strong opposition in parliament. So if the Democratic Alliance are able or is able to collect all the other minority parties that are also part and parcel, except the few from the Indian folk, but those ones from the ANC, all defected, if they break them together, they will make a numbers almost about 150 MPs. The drop of Malema from the last 2019 elections of his members of parliament is because of the appreciation by Jacob Zuma, because during the 2019 there was no party for Zuma, so those who were pro Malema, they all voted. But in the case that we have Jacob Zuma, they didn't vote for Malema. That is why his number declined. So his number has declined. Zuma had appreciated after 5 months of campaign to almost 15%. So if they have 15% and you are not able to form government, and you raise your hands that I couldn't form government, there will be a second runoff. The moment that there's a second runoff, we are expecting a sharp increase of Jacob Zuma's party, the MK. So the moment the MK appreciated, it will downgrade the ANC. If they don't take care, they will be apart, 30% or 25% each. So South Africa ANC is in disgrace, gone. It will be gone. And because of the performance of the DA, now if there should be a second election, all the whites who didn't vote because they thought that the ANC would automatically win, all of them are now going to vote. And you're talking about the likes of the whole Eastern Cape. The whole Eastern Cape, going down to Port Alfred, Port Elizabeth, the whole Eastern Cape, they all now come fully to vote. Those who are even out of the country will all now fly in to vote for the DA. So if the DA becomes strong and they have 25, ANC have 25, and then the MK has 25, and others, Malema. So where Then, of course, it will come to a point that the DA will not say that before I join the belt, let me have the presidency. ANC is gone. So this brings to the question that politics is a dicey game. But the African way of politics is selfishness. And that is costing Ramaphosa up to this. But if we learn how to dialogue among ourselves, we learn how to understand ourselves, we will still not be under colonization. Because now, they have indicated that the appetite, except the fact that there was a segregation, now people, there are even some of the ANC who would have wished that appetite is back, either in support of Zuma or against Ramaphosa or in support of what? Malema. Because they couldn't manage their own affairs. They couldn't manage their own affairs. If within 30 years, you've come down below the 50% ANC in the next 10 years, will there be any ANC? No. So South Africa will start to experience what is called coalition government, coalition government, coalition government. Whereas Mandela gave you the country's election silver platter, one would have expected that now the ANC will be 90% in any elections that they go in. 90% would have been the estimated after 30 years if you have worked better, if you have worked on the ground, if you have given your own nationals, your own citizens, your own black people what they wanted, bring them up, give them better education, let them compete and have also all the jobs, the positions that have been in the hands of the whites, they would have also competed. But now if you go to banks, everything is still controlled by them, by the whites. All the state corporations is controlled by them. The chief executive, the deputy is all controlled by them. The finance is all controlled by them. So if they now come in to be parts, and now they are so needed, now you need them because they have the numbers. The ANC hasn't got the numbers. They have half of yours. And then if you they force you, which I'm thinking in the next 2 weeks will be the scenario, that'll be very dicey. We'll be here talking about ANC being shattered, butchered, divided. So there wouldn't be any ANC. So where is the substance? Do you know why? All this brings to bear how systematically ANC have treated the other African countries. When they were busy maltreating the Zimbabweans, they were busy maltreating Nigerians, busy maltreating Cameroonians, busy maltreating Mozambicans, busy maltreating Zambians, busy maltreating Malawians, busy maltreating all other African countries that went there to support and feel that it's part of our continent to work. All the three presidents, Ramaphosa, Zuma, Thabo Mbeki, all of them, they had a history of what is called their struggle against their own fellow Africans, the xenophobic attacks. They couldn't stop it. They all their time, they couldn't. And yet, the African countries were the base and the support that supported and helped South Africa for them to regain independence, call it, and then redeem themselves from the apartheid shackles. At the end of the day, they turn around. Every year round, every 2 years, there was a cycle of killing other Africans. So here they have now. Have you heard any African president passing or making comment on South African elections? Jamais. Nobody. Nobody has spoken about it. No opinion leader on the African continent has opened his or her mouth to talk about South Africa. Not the African Union. Nobody has advised them. Nobody has called for crisis meeting that, look, I'm Rwanda's president. I'm seeing the danger facing looming before ANC. And for that matter, Ramaphosa, Malema, Zuma, Neblé, all of you, come and let's talk and go back on the drawing table and then form a union government among yourselves and then reunite the party. Nobody. Because of how they've done to their citizens and how they handle the issue of the xenophobic attacks against other African countries. against other African countries. They claim they are not Africans. Now today, we see the smoothness level, whether they're Africans or not. They claim they are not Africans. Because when they are insulting you, they will tell you that you can't come from Africa, you can't come from Africa to South Africa. Listen to how even some of them they talk. Asking or telling a Zimbabwean who shares just a border that you can't come from Africa to come and misbehave in our country, South Africa. That is the mindset. So therefore, no African continent. You see, if we believe in dialogue, diplomatic dialogue, one African leader by now would have called the shot and called all the three members, call all the three parties, Zuma, Malema, and ANC, and sit them down and speak to them. That the worst case scenario, whether you like it or not, you are still blacks. You are still black South African. Why are they having it? Look at the strong frontier and barrier between these three. Look at how they hate themselves. Look at it. How are they going to survive? How are they going to survive with this kind of a heat? So South Africa, my dear, is in crisis. South Africa is in problem. And this is going to be a very serious problem for them to manage through and then come out of it. Will be a very difficult scenario. Very difficult. So I must say that that is the difficult times facing our dear country, South Africa, in the wake of this year elections. And then we are looking patiently what would happen between today and the next 2 weeks, which Ramaphosa is to form his government. It will be a very difficult exercise. But then it takes a political experience and a politician with dynamism, a politician with respect, to eat the humble pie and reach out to them, negotiations and dialogue. But up to now, Ramaphosa had not even made any speech. And the speech that would even help to water down the anger, but rather how they are only negotiating behind doors, how they will be able to get the DA or etc. But the DA will not come on the table without asking for a high profile, the vice presidency, because they are thinking that since Mandela's time, they're supposed to have a vice president who is a white to balance the equation. There can't be any other better time than now. For me, between you and I, Doctor, I would wish that South Africa must have a white vice president so that they can learn and learn well. Because the country given to them for the last 30 years, there's nothing that they've done to the country, nothing. So they don't deserve to have vice president, a black, and a black president. They don't deserve to have it. The white must also have a say. In fact, for me, if you ask my view on how I see the whole thing, I'm looking at a scenario where there will be a white. Because in South Africa today, those who like Africans, and if I say Africans, I'm talking about those who like Cameroonians, those who like Nigerians, those who employ Ghanaians, those who employ other Africans, those who accept the other Africans, they are the whites, which we call them originators of the apartheid. They are the people giving jobs. They are the people taking care of the other Africans, not the South Africans as in the black South African. And it's very sad. And I'm not surprised that they are paying for such a huge price for what they've treated themselves and how they've treated the other African countries. I think our next topic, we should be able to encourage our two young men, Basiru Faye and then also Usman Sonko, for their achievement of being respectively the young leaders to take the mantle of Senegal to another destination ever since the country's independence in the 60s. I'm saying that, yes, it has not been a practice, as African is always calling the youth, saying that they want the old people, the old political class had not been helpful, they are not doing this or doing that. But greatly, when we go back to the ballot, it is still the same youth who have been voting the old people into power. Senegal have shown the way. And I'm saying that it is high time for African continent, the elections ahead in various countries across board, they should be looking at giving their own youth, using their own youth power, using their own balloting power to support, if even not at the presidential level. We have the MPs. It is the member of parliament or the parliament and the Congress where laws could be enacted, laws could be made, and be able to change the whole political system. So therefore, if the youth should learn to do what the Senegalese did, because when Bassirou Faye and Ousmane Sonko, all of them were behind bars in the hands of Macky Sall, they put them behind bars. But the youth stood by them and voted them because, as I said earlier on, I gave a classical explanation and then interpretation as to how many and all over the African continent, including Senegal, the youth forms more than 50 to 60% of the population. So if the youth form 50 to 60% of the population and you have a youth leader at the age of 40, why wouldn't you encourage them? Look at the small time that the two of them came into power. They are not even up to 2 months. Look at how and then the way they've started doing things in Senegal. We pray that the African political sickness and illnesses, the demons will not enter into them. But if they are to stick to the ideals, if they are to stick to their youthful exuberance, if they are to stick to their economic understanding and the way they see things visionary, and comparing to contemporary countries that have gone through stimulation of difficulties like ours, then Senegal is a country to watch. Because I believe, and I will say that they've started well. Some of us will be visiting them in very short time. We'll be having a discussions. We'll be encouraging them. We'll be telling them that they have to force and go ahead. So let it shine and let it be all on the continent. Africans all over, youth Africans should try now to be looking at how to bring the youth into the politics so that we can change. But if we still have the people in their 70s, 80s, late 60s, 90s, etc., then of course, for them, I would say that it has not been their style because they were manipulated by our colonial masters. In that, all those, the class that won independence from the colonial masters is the same political family that are still at the presidency, at the helm of affairs all over the African continent. Bring Cameroon, bring Ghana. Every presidential home or president of the country in any of those Africans, they are the old political class. They are not novice. They were the people whose fathers were there when the colonization took place, when they were given independence, and their children's children, their grandchildren are still the people leading the country. So they are emulating the standards, what their parents left and the legacy. And none of those legacies seek to have helped any African country, because the Pan-Africanism and the Pan-African legacies, none of them exist. They crash every of them down. Now we are having the European or the pro-Western democracy, call it the Western political class. These are the people ruling and still handling the affairs of the Africa. So let us have the young ones like Bassirou Faye, Ousmane Sonko, more of them, like we see in Burkina Faso, Traoré, like we see in Assimi Goïta, Mali, like we see, and they, of course, an elderly person, but Chiani, what he's doing in Niger. These are the kind of things that we want to see on the continent of Africa, not the relaxed political class who are only taking their what is called the pressure drugs, who are already tired, who takes about 29 drugs tablets a day before they go to office, who takes about 30 drugs before they sleep. We don't need that. We need the youth to stimulate the affairs and push African continent to the destination that we are looking for. Not always to be the usual narratives and narrations that is just a talk show and nothing is being done. I think we should look at what is happening to South Africa and guide ourselves with these principles, that the next 2 weeks, South Africa, we should guide ourselves with the principle that time and time is coming to an end. For every political class or political system, there will be a change, regardless of how old the party is. The APC of Sierra Leone, the NPP of Ghana, the NDC of Ghana, and most of the parties across the continent who have taken the country and the citizenry for a ride, thinking that everything is just only a go-go, everything is just only unchangeable. The South Africans, the party divisions alone has made it possible that you cannot have that kind of a game relying on the same game plan and thinking that complacency would always be there. And if they over complacent, that is punishing them. And I expect that they are not able to form even a union government in the next 2 weeks. So they will go back to the ballot and let's see what happens to that country. Even though, regrettably, it is the strongest African economy. When South Africa is affected, it's going to hit hard, especially the frontline states. But who cares? We want to see changes on the continent of Africa. If we have a dialogue and we have an organization called the African Union, one would have thought that looking at what the apartheid to the citizens and the South African, the black South Africans went through, they would have by now called a ceasefire among the feuding members of the ANC family. They would have sat down by now. You've seen it. No African ANC. There's nothing called that African Union, the SADC or whatever, cannot, SADC member countries can call for what? A ceasefire and see to fix so that they go back and fix and bring the ANC and change the affairs. Nobody is talking. We are waiting until there's a breakdown before there will be summit, Yaoundé summit, Accra Peduase summit, Abuja summit 1, and it will be a regular showcase of a team party. That is how Africa resolved it. We take advantage of any disadvantages just to have a party and even make budget and make money instead of solving the problems. Next time we'll deal with the Palestine, we'll deal with Russia, and then other topics that we haven't dealt with since I've been off your line. Now, get in touch. I know you are making me sign undertaking that on Thursday I'm coming. I'll try on Thursday for us to tag bridge with Senegal. It's a topic of my choice, so we'll deal with it, Doctor.
Thank you very much. Thank you so very much. And coming in on our best, we've just been saying it's the same thing like we keep saying. The most richest or powerful African on the continent, Dangote, it's been complaining of having to apply for 35 for visas to get access to 35 African countries. That is a mess. And I don't even know how to describe that.
Yes.
So we're going to handle on that topic as well. But thank you so very much, Farouk. I know it's late out there. It's also late out here. And I want to really, really appreciate you despite the technical challenges on your end. As you can see, we are free. We're technical challenge free on the Pan-African Daily, and we're ready to roll on and catch up. You know, we catch up because nothing has been happening, like we said, even after 6 in the month, nothing. So it's easy that we're going to catch up on every other thing. So thank you so very much, brother. Greetings to all our people in Ghana, and we catch us on Thursday.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes.
Thank you. Good. Good night, good night, good night, good night, you people. Good night, my people here. Thank you so very much also for following up on this very, very hectic, in-depth conversation. I think it's really been a long time that we really touch on our wounds, that we scratch our wounds this deep. It's been long. And I want to actually thank you for being that backbone that we've always wanted. I mean, I saw your comment, you know, actually congratulating our brother, and even when Professor James actually, because Professor James was at work and heard him speak, and it's like, hey, put me, I want to listen to that firebrand. I never heard it before. So we are really thanking your support to keep Pan-African Daily in existence. I don't want to really say all this again, we would be giving you the means of how you can support Pan African Daily to make us bring back the vibe on another level. Okay, like, you know, we're operating on the continent now, so please, our PayPal is not, I mean, it's cut off. Like you all know, even more than 2 years ago, we have been blocked from any financial, you know, access on the Pan African Daily. But you know what? Now we're on the continent. That Prof,
That is a
what do you
beautiful
think about
analysis.
that? Because of the, yes,
I think the analysis made all the sense in the world. Um, if ANC is to have any power going forward of significance, they've got to make that coalition.
yes,
They don't have a choice. But as our brother has articulated, that it is amazing that they have not been able to unite the fragmented parts of ANC to meet the forces of apartheid, which is trying to make its way back. It's almost like he was speaking earlier. We're in a mind freeze of some sort. Our unconsciousness has taken over our common sense, that we are focused so much on winning elections, we have not put together a policy or program for running the nation, economically, politically, culturally, and socially. And so the nation, in terms of its people, have not evolved since the death of Nelson Mandela. Matter of fact, we've devolved rather than evolve into a higher, more positive social, economic, and political position. And so it's kind of sad, but Brother Farouk is so on point with his data, with his analysis, with his depth of understanding, that this program has to be shared quickly and in many places as it can be. Because we watched also on Sunday an election in Mexico, where the major party won the Congress, both the upper and lower house, and they brought in their candidate, the first woman president of Mexico. And that party have consolidated power so that president will be able to govern. Our situation right now in South Africa, no one is president yet. We can't govern ourselves yet. Yet in a majority African state, that should not be the case. But because of the colonial mindset and the European value system practiced by the African middle class and elite, the continent of Africa is going back into slavery, back into colonialism, at its own hands. But its own hands that's in the intellectual mindset and value system of the former European colonizers. And so we need to come up with then an African ideology, an African spiritual system, an African historical perspective, an African dream of the future that does not include the dominance of those who have enslaved and colonized us. Period. One Africa has to be more than a phraseology. One Africa must be a practice. And we can start by taking down the borders, getting rid of the visas for the 54 nation, wipe them out. That could be done overnight. If we can do that first step, in parts of the country, we have relaxed the tariffs. That's good. But you still have visas. This makes no sense. Okay? It doesn't even, because of our parochialism, meaning, I don't even want to call it tribalism, but our false notion of ethnocentricity, nations that did not exist before the Berlin Conference. We can't even build a decent freeway from one nation to the other that would move our commerce in a way that it would make sense. You know? So I just listened to Baba Farouk, and that analysis and history he laid out is one of the best I've seen. I'm just here not knowing what to say other than congratulations, my brother. You are absolutely brilliant. And Susan, you were absolutely a genius to bring him on at this time. We don't know who's interfering with him staying on. We're sure somebody don't like his analysis at all. But he's very clear. And the young man in South Africa, he underestimated the rhetoric of radicalism. You cannot substitute the rhetoric of radicalism for grassroots, door-to-door organization. And more effort should be put into grassroots, door-to-door organization around the values of Pan-Africanism. Because most of our people do not understand Pan-Africanism. And South Africa, more than any, have been taught to fear Pan-Africanism, fear the entry into the country of other African nationals, you see. And so many of them oppose young Julius because they think that the doors of South Africa will be open to the multinationals from other African nations. And they've been taught to perceive that as a negative. And they practice that perception, you know. And they voted such that they would rather have white apartheid back rather than have unity with the African peoples of the continent. That's a sad thought, but that's what I glean from the voting pattern and behavior I saw in South Africa. So I don't know how long the show is. Can you hear me, Susan?
Yes, I can hear you. I think Al is, if you don't mind, we bring him. You've been going out and
yeah, I'm actually at work, and I need to go back to work.
Susie, I'm here.
Thank you very much, Rob.
I'm here, Susie.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.